Good morning and welcome to Win TV. I'm your host, GWUL, and I'm so honored to have us Mr. George H. Lambert, who's the president and CEO of the Greater Washington Urban League here in Washington, D.C. And we are here today to talk about racial equity. Mr. Lambert, welcome to Win TV.
Thank you so much, Denise. Delighted to be with you. Always delighted to be with you. So thank you again.
Oh, my pleasure, my pleasure. And it's a good day to start the morning because we all wake up first thing in the morning, go to our cell phones, cut on the television, and we're hearing consistently, which is probably a good thing, conversations about the race-related issues, everything from crime to home ownership or housing to food insecurity to environmental justice. All of those things seem to have the stream of racial equity or inequity that runs through them all. And why is it that the Urban League is so focused on this issue?
So, I have to tell you, the focus for us was even elevated more, particularly after the murder of George Floyd. And as a result of that, so many companies reached out to me and said, President Lambert, what can we do? And so we are still addressing that question now. But here's what I say to the ongoing question of what can we do? It's quite frankly time for folks to stop asking questions and start making statements. Okay, that's kind of the next level. I am a strong believer in this. So sometimes we subscribe to form, other times we subscribe to substance. Here's the difference between the two. When we subscribe to form, then we're really kind of staying complacent with the status quo. When we subscribe to substance, there is a real and very strategic alignment, if you will, in terms of doing something, making a difference, and moving the needle forward. And so those are the kind of conversations that we've been having with companies, saying to them, if you're willing to go beyond the metaphor, quite frankly, if you're willing to subscribe to substance, then let's move the needle forward in the equity space. And that's the part of the work that the Greater Washington Urban League is doing.
And so when you say racial equity, and it's interesting because the whole 1960s and beyond civil rights movement was focused a lot on equality, and folks kept saying we're not trying to be equal. I know my father used to talk about that. If we talk about equal progress, we're still always at the bottom. We take 2 steps forward, we're still 2 steps behind, right? Equity has a different definition. And can you define that for us?
Well, let me just go a step beyond defining, because yes, I'm happy to define it as well, but give you examples of what I'm talking about, particularly when we're talking about companies. So I talk a lot about from time to time with companies regarding what they're doing in the talent acquisition space, and talent acquisition space regarding folks who look like us, okay? And so helping them to push the needle in the talent acquisition. And what we often find is that folks who look like us, who do get hired in many companies, who are at the senior levels, they may come in at the same day that a white counterpart comes in as well. 2 or 3 years later, they may end up reporting to that white counterpart. Here is what happens, and this is what equity is about. One of those candidates get the mentoring and the coaching. The other one does not. Now, do I need to explain to you which one does not? Because that's where the equity lens needs to really kind of fall in terms of when we're talking about equity, how we make sure we're doing it across the board in terms of moving the needle, advancing and helping folks to move forward. The other thing we do as well, we help companies a lot of times, just the what I've described to you, to look at where they may have blind spots, because quite frankly, they may not be aware that it's a blind spot for them, that one candidate is getting coaching and mentoring and the other one is not. But that's the needle that we need to push in terms of equity when we're talking about companies.
And so the focus is on companies. And if you looked at the DC metro area, where the area that the Greater Washington Urban League serves, do you actually do report cards? How do you know whether we have moved the needle at all as it relates to racial equity since the murder of George Floyd?
Well, again, it's back to my earlier statement about folks need to start making statements rather than continue to ask questions. I won't name the company, but I remember right after the murder of George Floyd, one of the major financial institutions here, the top of house president of the company, immediately grabbed the media spot to say that they were looking to move the needle forward. They had recognized that they were under indexed, if you will, in terms of where they were in equity space. And so, said that they were committed to do it, they would do it, but also that uh, the rub for me was that it was going to take them 5 years to move that needle. Now, we are sending folks to the moon and all over the globe and every place else now. And I guess, that one with me was just very difficult to understand why it would take us so long to really move that needle forward. So even my thought on that to them was, well, you should at least bring the Urban League in to help you all to take a look at your metrics over the next 4 or 5 years or so with regard to are you moving the needle and to what extent are you moving the needle. So to your point, yes, companies do need to be reporting out on it. We don't have the information they do. But we are looking to hold folks accountable. You need to be reporting out what you are doing in this space. How are you moving the needle forward? And then the reason we had the Equity Summit is so that folks could come and share best practices as well in a safe space, because that's part of it as well. Sometimes folks don't understand how to move this needle forward, but there are some best practices out there with regard to how to do it.
So let's talk about the summit, which was held on, I think it was April the 28th. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. And what was the purpose of the summit? Who was there? And what were the outcomes?
So the purpose of the summit, this was our third year in terms of doing it, was really designed to kind of address the question that, as I mentioned earlier, about it's now moved to trust and equity. In other words, we're in the age of trust and what companies are doing around trust and equity. You can in fact love a brand of a company, but if you don't trust that brand or that company that they're going to certainly do right with regard to equity, then you will probably pull away from that brand. Companies understand that now that we're in this age of trust. And same thing with folks who work in particular companies now as well. If you don't trust the company that you're working for in terms of what they're doing in the equity space, individuals will leave those companies. So I think, companies really kind of get it. So that was part of the purpose of making sure that we understand that we're in this age of trust. And in terms of a business imperative, if you will, companies really have to kind of understand that as well. So the purpose was that the outcomes is that hopefully this will help companies to move the needle forward. We brought in subject matter experts who really work in this space all the time and had them to share, present, or whatever to many of the companies that we had in the room for the event. And I think some good things came out of it. We will, of course, continue to follow, all of the companies who were there. We will also be looking to take the show on the road to some extent. We're invited by a few of the companies to come and bring it, to their particular headquarters, their venue, to share with their entire staff and team as well. So,
Who were some of those companies, President Lambert? Can you mention them
well,
that participated at the summit?
so first of all, AT&T hosted us at their venue. Care First, Volkswagen, who I'm blocking some other company as well.
Okay.
Amberson, who's owned up a Safeway at one point. I mean, it's a long list of companies. I don't have them all.
And most of them, I would assume, are locally based.
Most of them are locally based, in as much as they are locally. Well, yes, so all of them are locally based, but they
Okay.
also have footprints around the globe as well. So yes.
I think it's interesting to hear you say, because, for so long when we realized that companies don't, let's say, treat us right, we are always calling for boycotts and what have you. And there's never been any, I can think of few occasions when there's been some consequence that shows that those calls for boycotts have basically been effective. Yet you have told these companies that, uh, Black patrons tend to be loyal. And if we don't feel respected, we will take our dollar someplace else. And also that we will leave companies. That's interesting. I didn't know that we were actually using our feet to make statements like that.
Well, we should use our vote and always use our feet as well, particularly in terms of our purchase dollars. But yes, but to your point, there is a whole battery of information research that's been done Part of it's been done by the Ellisman Group as well, but really kind of showing those, those results. That's what folks are doing. Again, it is back to the age of trust. And again, if we don't trust, we will leave the company, or we will certainly, regardless of how much we love the product, certainly avoid purchasing the product as well. Uh, that is, that quite frankly is just so important that companies kind of understand that. Listen, the world is browning at this point. And as companies, and all of us know that the world is browning, even though there's a resistance to it, it is a business imperative now for companies to move and to certainly do what they need to do in this space. We would hope that they don't do it just because the world is browning, but it's really, quite frankly, the right thing to do.
So as a result, again, of the summit, what are next steps?
Well, next steps are to continue to be engaged with many of the companies. As I said, we've been invited by a few to take the show on the road, so to speak, to bring all of this directly to them, so that we can do it with a much broader level of staff in their office, many of their employees as well, mid managers, just their staff across the board. The next step is that we are already planning for next year's event as well, and we will be doing recaps. We have put up some links on our website where you can certainly, if you missed this particular event, certainly kind of have an opportunity to go and take a look. And then, of course, continue to have very direct and engaging conversations with many of the companies. One of the things I want to do, and we did do this with Care First, we celebrated them by certainly honoring them with an award, because they are a company that's kind of leading in this space. And that's always an important thing. Companies that lead in this space, we want to embrace them, to really kind of, showcase them, so to speak, celebrate them with the work that they're doing. So
When you
that's
say
one.
lead, though, President Lambert, what do you mean? What is the evidence of their leadership? I mean, is there certain things that you looked for, and you said yes, they're checking off all the boxes?
Checking off all the boxes in terms of, really kind of getting it right, so to speak, with regard to the equity lens, particularly as it relates to leadership within their company, senior leadership within their company, their talent acquisition strategy to bring folks in. They're really doing what I call the hard work and the right work to do with regard to the mentoring and the certainly coaching for folks that they bring in their company as well. Those are important things. Here's the bottom line. What I say a lot of times now, if there is not a clear path to someone that needs to look like you and I, if we were in one of these companies, there's not a clear path for some point for us to emerge to be president of the company. That's an impediment. That's a barrier. And that's what I'm talking about in terms of equity lens. That needs to be removed in terms of the equity lens that company has. That's a barrier. And so that's the work that we're trying to do in terms of break down those barriers, help companies to really kind of understand it, so that we can move the needle forward.
Well, I think it's extremely beneficial to have a Greater Washington Urban League to be the watchdog, to monitor what these companies are doing, and to report out. I guess I assume that's part of what this process is too, to let people know, or at least the companies know, that they're not making the mark, or in the case, as you said, of Care First, they're making all the marks. So it's a great thing that you had this summit, and this is, as you said, something you plan to do annually. Is that the case?
Absolutely correct. This is
Mhm.
our third year of doing it. So this one was designed again to, do to continue to follow up, to keep companies engaged with us as they are moving the needle in their space as well. And so, very appreciative of those who stay in the course. We even had some new ones to on board with us this year as well. But what I did want to say to you is certainly appreciate, the work you and your family have done in this community over the years, and certainly
Thank you.
cover our stories, because again, we need to be part of telling our stories, and this is part of our story as well. And so the Washington Forum has done that for so many years, over the years, particularly the story of the Greater Washington Release. So thank you for that.
Can't think of a better time to sign off than now. It's a great a shout out to us, and I really appreciate that, President Lambert. And you know that the door is always open for you to come here and share the great work that you all are doing. And for people that don't know, you're right in, well, pretty much what I call the heart of the city, what we call uptown, downtown, but 14th and where's the Urban League located?
Right on the corner of 14th and Harvard.
Mm-hmm.
Our footprint is Washington, D.C., Prince George's County, and Montgomery County, but the headquarters here in Washington, D.C., right at the corner of 14th and Harvard.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so very much for being with us this morning. Let me ask before I let you go, is there anything that I didn't ask you that you want to share before we sign off?
The only thing you didn't ask me is to commit to me that you're going to invite me back.
Yeah, I will invite you back. That's my commitment.
All right. Thank you, Denise.
All right. Thanks so much. Have a great day. And thank
Right.
you for watching WIN TV.
Okay. Thank you. Take care.
All right.